The President, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired. Recent media interview and the Democracy Day speech has continued to garner mixed reactions among Nigeria. Despite the ban on Twitter activities in Nigeria, Mr. Buhari's trended on the microblogging platform for several hours after the interview. The over 40 minutes interview, which arguably offered more insights than the barrage of statements from his spokesperson, was an appraisal of his 6 years in office, touching on his successes as well as areas of deficiencies, particularly security and economy. Looking at this issue, along with the massive nationwide and global June 12 protest, is the National Publicity Secretary of the African Action Congress, AAC, Comrade Femi Adeyeye. It's a pleasure having you on Sahara TV.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Let me get your reaction. Yesterday, the Senior Special Assistant to the President of Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, said some people were disappointed to have seen his principal, that's Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired, real-life interviews and broadcasts last weekend. Let's get your reactions to this. And he actually stated, let me quote him, that the president has always been in control, but there has been misperception and propaganda. In fact, he went ahead to say that the largest section of Nigerians are satisfied and happy to have seen the president animated, real life, capable, and exuding the confidence and capability to govern well. The interview with Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired, how will you assess that? What's your assessment of that interview? Let's get your reaction to this.
All right, thank you very much for that question. I think both interviews have just one thing in common, to summarize it. And you can also tell from the statements issued by Garba Shehu, on behalf of the presidency. Nigeria today, we have different sections of the presidency. Garba Shehu is a section, Fadishino is another section. You have Tolu Ogunlesi as another section of the presidency. We are not even sure which one we need to listen to at any point in time. They just have several sections. But to summarize it is what he himself has done by saying many Nigerians were disappointed that the president could discuss issues. To me, it's just a clear show that the propaganda, or what I want to call, the propaganda that the president is not alive and all of that has always been, in the polity, that the president is not alive, is not aware of what's happening in the surrounding and all of that. It's just the presidency, that the section of the presidency, the Garba Shehu section, is just happy that at least Nigerians can now believe that the president is alive. So for me, both interviews are just a proof of life. It was nothing, it's just a proof of life. It's just like when you adopt somebody and then people are asking that, okay, is that person still alive? And then you just say, please just talk to your relatives. So it was just a proof of life to Nigerians that the president is still alive and all of that. So the whole statement, from the Arise interview to the Democracy Day speech and all of that, are just repetition, different data that he has always been reading out from his 2019 when he was seeking re-election, from 2015. So it was just some mishmash of repetition, the same data. And at some point, if you're not careful, if you cannot understand, or if you do not, if you cannot distinguish voice, you would think the president is still an opposition figure, because he was just criticizing himself, and in some point, he would then go ahead to blame everyone in his usual style. That's so usual of the Major General, always blaming everybody except himself. So that is what those interviews really portray to the Nigerian people. But it is just too late. Actually, it's just too late. Nigerians have moved past this era of PR kind of government.
I still want you to react to some of Nigerians' feelings with regards to the body language of the president. Some are of the opinion that the president seems not to be logically coherent, especially in his responses, and the fact that he lacks there is a cognitive dissonance in his responses, especially when it comes to issues. How will you view that?
Definitely, that has always been the issue. You see, the problem is just that we do not nip the bud as early as possible. It's teaching time saves nine. When you have a president who was on the presidential candidates in the as a run to the 2019 elections, and it was being asked about the particular acts. You've not signed this to law. He was looking at Oshibajo. Oshibajo said he does not. Oshibajo was trying to tell Kadari Ahmed that he does not know about that particular act. That's, don't worry, I would answer. And Kadari Ahmed, had to tell Oshibajo that, please, just that's the vice president, that he can answer for himself. That's a big disgrace, on national TV. That's, please, the vice president, allow the president to speak for himself. So for a very long time, since that time till now, the whole dissonance, the whole incoherence and all of that, we've known all of these things, and that is what Nigerians should have, saved at that time. They should have saved that stitch at that time, but it has now, the stitch, because we did not stitch that part of our cloth at that time, it has resulted to several, torn parts of our fabrics. One thing I would need to add also is that Nigerians must, move away from PR. We've left that level. Nigeria has very good laws. Let me say there are litany of laws, on paper, but in reality, we cannot find any of this law, in favor of the people. So we must move away from propaganda, whether the president speaks or not. That's not the issue. Nigeria has moved ahead.
Looking at some of the issues that was pointed out, one of the issues has to do with the treatment of the southeast part of the country. I mean, and his statements. Your party, the African Action Congress, was actually dissatisfied with the president's statements and his treatment, and the malice he continued to keep, unquote, against the southeasterners. I mean, what's your view about this? I mean, shouldn't have the president be more tactical and tactful in terms of his expressions, especially towards the southeasterners?
Both the president and the people around him are doing him a serious disservice. That's just the truth. And for every opportunity the president gets to right the wrongs, he always, he messes them up. And the speech, the Arise interview speech, provided another opportunity for him to have right, the wrong on the genocidal tweets that he had, his tweets deleted by Twitter, and then the whole events that played out since that time. But we understand so well that people who fought the war, they still have the war in their heads. And that was what President Buhari said in that interview that he had, that was now transcribed as a tweet. He said those of us who were at the war front for 30 months, we understand what happened. So we would treat them in the language they understand. So he's just been that was why I was saying he's sincere in his unflowery, unpresidential statements. He's very sincere, even if he's making mistakes. He's sincere with those mistakes. He's sincere with those statements. He's saying what he would do. You understand? Those who are around him should have been the one to at least assist him and call him back and say, Mr. President, this statement you've made is very unpresidential. How do you threaten your citizens? How do you threaten your citizens at a time where the polity is heated, so heated that you can, if you place, like I was telling someone yesterday, that if you place Nigeria on a map right now, President Muhammadu Buhari cannot, the regime of President Muhammadu Buhari cannot boast of 20% of the Nigerian space. If you look at the Northeast, terrorists have taken over the Northeast. It is so bad in the Northeast that, or let me say, Nigeria's the space is now so porous for insecurity that terrorist groups are even, staging coup against each other. ISWAP is coming to take over from Boko Haram. We now have good bandits, we have bad bandits, according to the consultants on banditry, our Professor Sheikh Gumi. Now, so if you go away from the Northeast, look at the North Central, it is the same thing. The bandits are taking over, the Northwest. Leave the Northwest, move to the Southeast. You have unknown gunmen. Move from there, move down to the Southwest. So if you place Nigeria on the map right now, the government cannot boast of 20% of the space. So at the time where everywhere is heated, the president should have come forward with statements that show that you are a nationalist. You are a nationalist. You are a presidential, figure. But every statement by the president, like someone said jokingly, he said, we should stop asking the president to speak, because every time you ask him to speak, he disappoints. Every point in time. So we at the African Action Congress, we condemn such statements by the president. We describe the statement as genocidal. It is still genocidal, both in his statements and his body language towards the Southeasterners. And in fact, there is even a coup against the Nigerian people that must become, a conversation moving forward. The secret memo that was leaked that was written by Malami to the president, that the president should suspend the constitution, it's a coup against the Nigerian people. It's a coup against the Nigerian people. So it is not just a Southeastern something, or that the Nigerian, the president is holding grudges or malice against the Southeastern. He's holding serious malice, serious grudges against the citizens of Nigeria, and we must all condemn it, everybody.
Let's look at other issues in his Democracy Day speech. From open grazing, add to the issue of lifting 10.2 million Nigerians out of poverty. One begins to wonder, considering the facts on the ground and the economic indices, what is wrong with that statement that this government has actually lifted 10.2 million Nigerians out of poverty? Do you agree with that?
Oh, yes, the president is right. Is right that he has lifted 10.5 million people out of poverty. I think it's even more than that. The figure is more than that. Only that the president has lifted them from poverty to multi-dimensional poverty. That's the truth. There's a statistics to that over 100 million Nigerians are now in multi-dimensional poverty. And when we say multi-dimensional poverty, if you understand it clearly, you will find out that it is not even about the resources in your pockets. It is not about you, living below $1 per day, $1.10 per day. No, it is now to the point that you can have the money. You can have the good car, but there are no good roads to drive them. You can have the money and not have good health care. That is poverty, and that is what we tell the middle class people who think many of our campaigns in the African Action Congress and the Take It Back movement are so confrontational. No, we've gotten to that point that we must all understand that we are all poor. And the second issue we should be looking at is this. I was discussing with a journalist friend, that I think journalists should start looking at the ransoms that have been paid by by citizens who have their relatives and all of that, or themselves, kidnapped. It is a trend. It is another insecurity trend that nobody is looking at now. Because in an economy where people are paid 18,000 naira minimum wage, yet you are paying ransoms to the tune of 10 million, 15 million, and all of that, you should ask, where are people getting the money to pay ransoms? Are they getting it through crowdfunding? Those who are crowdfunding, because I'm very sure it is not, economic resources are scarce. So it was going to get to a point, the person even crowdfunding would be broke. And then we will be back to the insecurity issue, because it's another trend of insecurity we should be looking at. So when the president said he has lifted 10.5 million people out of poverty, he's correct. He has only lifted 10.5 million people from poverty to multi-dimensional poverty.
One question that has actually been on the minds of a lot of Nigerians was the fact that the National Assembly has kept a mute indifference as far as these actions of the president is concerned. Why, in your opinion, is the leadership of the National Assembly sitting down and allowing Buhari to trample on all over the Constitution?
You see, you cannot take away the fruits from the tree that bears it. It's not possible. There's an article I had on June 12. I published on June 12, 2019, and I said something. I said you cannot take away the results from the process. Though many of these members of the National Assembly, these are ex, governors, these are ex, system people who are part of the system.
Some have alluded that it has become the retirement home.
Of course, it's a retirement plan. As a governor, before you're done, you're beginning to think in that direction that I'm moving to the Senate. So it's a retirement plan already. So you cannot. So Buhari is not different from the people at the National Assembly. The National Assembly people are not different from the people. So you do not expect any opposition. You do not expect any checks and balance.
Away from President Buhari's speeches and interviews, the massive nationwide and global June 12 protests became a milestone in the struggle against this regime's tyranny and its utter inability to take care and provide better life for Nigerians. What message had been passed with regards to this Democracy Day protests?
Okay, what I think what you're trying to say is the June 12th protests.
Exactly.
Because we need to be very careful about the use of the word democracy.
Exactly.
We just many times we use these words. We use them amiss. There are three things we need to understand here. Civilian rule is not democracy. Elections is not democracy. Good governance also is not democracy. These are issues that we raised some other time, maybe in a better platform. Maybe a summit or a symposium. So back to the June 12th protests tagged Buhari Must Go. Buhari Must Go is a campaign. It's a movement. It's not a movement. It's a movement that seeks to bring everybody and every grievance, anyone who has a legitimate grounds against the regime can come under this umbrella. Because Nigerians have now gotten to that point where they understand that we cannot continue to protest on issues. We cannot pick this issue. We cannot pick another issue. We are just picking several issues. Because before you are done with insecurity, there is a breach on your fundamental human rights where protesters for pasting posters were sent to prison. Before you're done with that, there is another Twitter ban, announced by executive fiat, where a minister just announced, bans social media, and they are already licensing OTT, already sending a directive to license OTT and every other TV stations. Out of that, before you're done with that, there is an infringement on your right to privacy by terrorist-linked Pantami. Before you're done with that one, so there are so many issues, so many issues. So why, instead of picking on this one, picking on that one, why can't we all bring all of these grievances under an umbrella, which is the Buhari Must Go? Because this regime represents the roots of all these fruits. All these I've mentioned are fruits of oppression. They are fruits of tyranny. And so the regime is just the roots. And so instead of tackling the fruits, why not let us just go for the root and uproot this whole oppression once and for all? And that is what the Buhari Must Go regime represents. And in the campaign, we have 14 demands that has been stated, published everywhere. One of which is that even the 1999 Constitution should be abolished because it is the root of all evils. It is the root of the whole problem that we have, because it is not a constitution that represents the aspiration of the people. We've been saying this. The presidential candidate of the African National Congress, Omoyele Sowore, mentioned it point, blank. Even before anybody started, one thing we are very good at is that we come out and say it the way it is. And until when people now start seeing it as something popular, that is when they start jumping in. And that's why you can see the Afenifere calling for a brand new constitution. This is something we've said as far back as 2018. The Ohanese is also calling for a brand new constitution and not a constitutional review like the charade that they had just some 2 weeks ago. So that is exactly what the Buhari must go, campaign represents. That anyone who has a legitimate grounds come under this and let us put an end to this old tyranny. And the whole argument that you cannot remove a democratically elected president. Those arguments are very lame. And I would say they are very lame because a lot of education has not been done in that regard. Like I said earlier, election is not democracy. Because if that was the case, will you describe what's happening in Uganda? Because I want to go away from Nigeria now. Will you describe what happened in Uganda, wherein Museveni was sworn in the 6th time? Will you describe that as a democracy? They had an election, but is that a democracy? Where the internet was shut down on the day of election, where opposition members were killed, were injured. Till this moment, even Bobby Wine's residence is still under siege. It is the same thing here in Nigeria. Someone raised the banner of revolution now, and for 2 years, he has been kept, in open prison. He cannot get out of Abuja.
Nigerians were shocked, befuddled, and disappointed, seeing the suppression of the protest by these elements, especially by the security forces. Considering the fact that it is this same June 12, the back of this June 12 protest, that many within this government actually rode into power. And considering the fact that they themselves were actually involved in various stages of protest before the advent of this APC government. What's your reaction to this, especially with regards to the mistreatment of protesters here in Nigeria, as against what happened in other parts of the world where the protests also took place?
Yeah.
What does that portend?
You see, it's quite embarrassing that even on a supposed democracy day, the government could not even pretend to be democratic. They could not even pretend, just pretend to be democratic, even on a supposed democracy day. You see, but it all speaks to a fact, and it's the fact that the government has lost legitimacy before the people. Have you ever been in an argument where you argue with someone, and when you've lost the argument, you feel like slapping the person? I've been in that position before. I don't know about you, but I've been in that position before. I just feel like going violent because I've lost the argument. I do not have any opinion anymore. I don't have any fact. That is the state of the Nigerian government right now, the Buhari regime. They've lost the arguments, they've lost the debates, they've lost popularity, lost legitimacy. And so the next thing is to use brute force. Debate for debate, this government cannot wait. Opinion for opinion, they cannot wait. Ideas for ideas, they cannot wait. So the next thing is to just use force on the people.
So what's the way forward at this point in time? Are we going to see more protests, more actions from Nigerians, especially against this government?
Yes, definitely yes. And people are not backing down. Like I said, it's a movement. It's not a movement. I remember when we started the revolutionary protest, and the presidential spokesperson, Femi Adeyeye, came on TV and said it was just a sprinkle of people. It was a phantom revolution. He described it as a phantom revolution and a sprinkle of people coming out. I've been waiting after the Buhari was protest for his comments, trying to repent from that particular statement. Someone like that could describe a revolution as a one-day event. No, it is not. It is something that continues. It is a movement. It's a movement and not a monument. And so the protests, the Buhari protest continues. There are discussions, going on as I speak to you. from Lagos to Ibadan to Abuja to Kano, globally, even outside the country, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, in the US and all of that. Nigerians are coming together to say, now enough is just enough.
So what are your final thoughts, please?
All right. So what I would say at this point in time is that Nigerians must continue to organize. There is no government anywhere in the world that has defeated the resoluteness of the oppressed. It is not possible. It is not possible. Even in Nigeria, we have history, of resistance and resoluteness. At any time the people stand up against even the military government, they could not, succeed. And that is the point where Nigerians have gotten to right now. Everyone, we just need to bond together, either from the southeast, from the north, from the southwest. The Fulani man is not my problem. In fact, if I'm to put us on a scale of oppression, he's more oppressed than I am, because he's the one who cannot sleep with his two eyes closed at every point in time. The level of insecurity in the north is, you cannot put it on the same scale like what's happening in the southwest and all of that. So we are all oppressed people. So let the oppressed people come together and face the oppressors who are also united in their oppression. So why then should the oppressed be divided in their resistance? I think that is where we are now.
Thank you. That's Femi Adeyeye, the National Publicity Secretary of the African Action Congress. It's a pleasure having you on Sahara TV. Thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you so much.